Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you are in our international community. Welcome to our gathering. Informally, we're going to be talking about emotional sobriety. That's really the laser focused. We've got a couple fancy phrases for it. Design for a living, way of life, and we'll talk lots more about that, unpacking that. I'm really honored. This is our first duet. Joe from Australia has been my companion on this path for 15 years. Joe, you want to introduce yourself in any way that you would like?
Yeah, thank you, Herb. And thank you to all those people listening in and tuning in from all over the world. It's morning for me. It's still morning. And I know there are some people on here calling in from the European time zone, and it is late. So welcome. It is such a joy to have you here and to be here with Herb today to focus on a design for living. That's what I learned here in this big book. In studying these steps, and I wasn't doing a very good job. I did the best I could, but when I met Herb and he started doing workshops with me and the community around us, my journey catapulted, takes it to that next level. And what I was learning with Herb was extended column work, to take what's written in that big book and to focus and to draw it out and to really get to that perceived role, because that's what I was missing. I really didn't see what I didn't see. And we're going to talk more about that, but getting to who I am. So Herb, I don't come from an alcoholic family or alcoholic background. It really wasn't exposed to me until I got into my teenage years and chose that life myself. But as a young one, at 11 years old, I started having panic attacks. My first solid panic attack, I was 11 years old, and life got pretty small after that. It was just moving one foot in front of the other, trying to manage that anxiety. All right, trying to manage that anxiety. And I would turn to anything to avoid that anxiety. So that included food, was one of the first things I picked up. When I got older, it would include other things. Right? But that anxiety is what I came here. And when I came into program, I was introduced at 21. And it's because I was doing some interesting things with food and exercise and bulimia and running around. And I had fainted and collapsed right outside this clinic. And the doctor said to me, his partner was in program, and he gave away her anonymity. I don't even know if it's real, Herb. But he said to me, go try this 12-step meeting, and it was for food. And I went there and I cried because it was the first time I started to hear other people speaking like me. So I cried for about 3 months, but I then left. I don't know if you have that experience where you are, but I was 21 years old, Herb. I didn't want to have, someone said the word chronic, and I'm a really clever person. I knew that word chronic meant forever. I didn't want to have a forever problem. I'm 21 years old. So I knew the solution was to go out and just don't go and hang around those nasty 12-step people. And so it took about 4 years, and now I've come back into program, and I am at that bottom place. 24 years old, I couldn't manage another day. I couldn't imagine another day on this planet. My anxiety had gotten so bad I couldn't get to the letterbox. That's not everyone's experience, but my world had gotten so small. Going outside my front door was an achievement. The only thing that got me out was to get my supplies, because I had to have supplies. That was it. Big trench coat, get out, get back as soon as you can, lock the door, and that was it. So I'm 24 years old and I'm humble. I'm not going anywhere, but I didn't hear the solution. I really just heard a lot of follow, put the plug in the jug, just do this, a lot of tools. I got given a lot of tools, but the problem, the disease, the behavior, it was all still there. And what happened for me was I put down in food, I did, and then I picked up in relationships. Okay, put down that. I pick up in TV. I don't know if they had, it was VHS back then. Nowadays it's Netflix. I'm abstaining from Netflix. If there was a Netflix Anonymous, I totally would be there, right? That binge watching, I can't do it. I will stay up all night. I know. And then be watching it the next day. So I am just I have this personality of this addict, but I didn't quite fit in. My problem wasn't food. My problem wasn't men and relationships. My problem wasn't all these at Netflix. My problem isn't Netflix. My problem was living life without these substances. And so then about 15 years ago, I'm now married because I'd done some beautiful work. I've been leading workshops. I told Herb, he was surprised. As soon as I get a minute of recovery, I start leading workshops. I love telling people what to do, right? Anyone who knows me will know that about me. I am a teacher. It's my training. And, I'm a teacher. I love teaching. I love people. I love meeting people, and I love seeing the light come on in their eyes. I really do. It's a joy to me. And I have a minute of recovery, and I'm there telling you what to do because I now know everything. But so there I am. I'm now in a relationship with a beautiful man that I met in recovery as best I could. And I'd started using again. I hadn't told him. I was hiding it in the car, and I could see the future, and I was scared. And that's when I met Herb. I called him out of the blue. He'd just finished his first telephone workshop. You remember that one? And this woman I was working with at the time was from Hawaii. I was now working this different food program. And she said, look, he's just finished this workshop. It's been going for like 18 months. I laugh sometimes because your workshops, I think they started at 2 years, Herb. Am I right? And then they went to 18 months. And then when we started, it was 12 months. And just recently we trialed 6 months, but I'm going back up to something longer than that. It's 6 months was too short. But anyway, so we met Herb. I met Herb. We started doing these workshops, and now I'm starting to get some recovery, because this extended work that we do, where you take, the big book has so much in it that it just gets missed. There is so much deep wisdom of human recovery, and it's not about alcohol. It's not about drugs. It's not about relationships. It's this deep human path. And that's what I'm energetic about teaching. That's what I'm here to share. And that's what Herb has taught me. I've been meditating. Anything that I say has probably come from Herb. So he's probably hearing it reflected back at him. So yeah, so welcome. That gives you a little bit of an insight to who I am and my journey with Herb. Since that time, I've now got 2 kids. They are teenagers. I actually measure how long I've known Herb by how old my kids are. So my eldest is 14, and that means I've known Herb 15 years. So, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. And if my journey can help someone else one more day, it's a joy to be here. Thank you. Back on.
No, thank you so much. A nice description of your journey and our journey together. So we're here to have some fun and also to have an experience. It's going to be very informal. It's our first time together. We both have a lot of information. We both have a lot of experience. We both like to share it. And we're just going to do the best we can to make it interactive with you. And that's a promise. And both of us will keep each other accountable for that. And we want to eventually talk about steps 10, 11, and 12. We're going to pace it. probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes on each of those with breaks in between, so that, not breaks, but pauses, so that we can have a Q&A with you. I hope you have a pen and paper, so that if you have a thought or an experience or some type of comment or challenge, that or question, certainly, that you'll be prepared to ask it. All right, so let's just begin here. This really is a very significant phrase, our way of life. Bill uses it at the end of the 9th step on page 84. We commenced this way of life as we cleaned up the past. My interpretation is he's including steps 10, 11, and 12 as our way of life. Joe has developed, and maybe taking words and phrases from the big book itself, a different sort of phrase for that. It's a design for living. So our way of life is like a noun, a design for living is like a verb. And I think that really captures the total dynamic of this process. We need to know what to do, and then we need the power to do it. Those of you who have had any exposure to me, and I'm not sure if Joe uses this quote of Einstein to open up the comment or the recommendation for set aside, having an open mind and open heart. He said, as I understand it, the consciousness that created the problem cannot be the consciousness that solves the problem. I just love succinct wisdom sayings like that. It just says that if my mind is the problem, my mind on its own is not going to solve the problem. It either needs new information and or it needs some transformation. Please join me in this prayer for transformation. We're inviting the Spirit, whatever that means to you, the Spirit of the universe, underlying the totality of things, one of my most favorite quotes from the big book, to bring the crowbar and open the mind and open the heart. We may not even realize that we're closed. Please join me. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, the 12 steps, our way of life, and you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, the 12 steps, our way of life, and especially you. This is pathetic Herbie. He didn't know that he didn't know. 1984, he began to wake up as the result of professionals asking him some questions and asking him to ask himself some questions about alcohol. It's a story for a different day. You heard a little bit about Joe's journey. Each of us is waking up in our own path and our own pattern. I went to AA as the result of discovering that I had an alcohol problem. But I was 4 years, like Joe, I was 4 years in the rooms with a sponsor, doing the drill, sponsoring people, and I didn't know that I didn't know about unmanageability. And I had a man who took me through the steps, and I finally came to have a knowledge of what unmanageability meant at 10 years of sobriety, 3 journeys through the steps. And I had a broader and deeper awakening that allowed me to connect to the spiritual malady. This is what we're going to be talking about today, dealing with the spiritual malady, not with addiction. No. We're assuming steps 1 through 9 have been worked. And as the big book said, we have been placed in a position of neutrality with regard to our addiction, because as the big book said, as Joe said, as my experience is, addiction's not our problem. Oh, it is a problem, but it is not the problem. The problem is what Bill calls in the big book a spiritual malady, unmanageability. So just ask yourself, is my life serial suffering? I love that term because it really captures 4 years sober, restless, irritable, and discontented. Do I really believe my life can change? Yes, but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know how to do it. I had no clue as to really that it was so necessary. Again, I couldn't see that I didn't see. Just an overview of the 12 steps. Then I'm going to pause and connect to Joe to see if she has any additional comments. We've not rehearsed this, so we really are just being spontaneous about our knowledge and our experience. But I'm a big believer in context. It's 12 steps to freedom. Well, yes, from our addiction, first half of the first step, but freedom from unmanageability. I'm going to say something that you might not hear in meetings, and it might startle you unless you've heard it from me before. Since 1988, when I did this work for the very first time, I have managed my life. God does not manage my life. Herb, manages my life, and I'm responsible to manage my life. I don't do it on my own power. I get guidance, and I'm in a relationship with a managing partner. I'm partners with the Spirit. And the Spirit is the managing partner, but I'm responsible to manage my life. And that's what we're talking about today in this Design for a Living. How to effectively and consistently manage our individual lives. Those first 3 steps are about having a relationship with power, determining that I need help, help's available, and I ask for help now on a regular basis. Through the steps 4 through 7, my partner and I, cleaned out the channel so that I have a really healthy relationship with myself, progressively healthier as I did the steps progressively over a 12-year period with 3 different people. I'm not saying this is one and done. I'm certainly not saying it's a process that you do once and then never do again. At least that's my experience. Steps 8 and 9 to have an effective and healthy relationship with other people, a process that concludes the forgiveness process, the process of releasing all the shadows, all the negativity in me in terms of my relationship with myself and my relationship with others. My synonym for spirituality is relationship. I try not to use the word spirituality. It has a lot of negative implications for many people. Not me, but for many people. How can I be more helpful? Well, get better words. A relationship with power, a relationship with life, a relationship with myself, a relationship with other people. Now, what we're going to be talking about today, assuming steps 1 through 9 have been completed or in the process of being completed, and having some freedom, some abstinence, some management of your addiction. We're going to talk about, so living life on a daily basis, living in reality. Some people call it emotional sobriety. Some people call it second stage recovery. We got free from our addiction through the first 9 steps. We get free from unmanageability. Free from it. Not cured, but we have a daily reprieve by 10, 11, and 12. Unmanageability. What do we mean by that? It's the human condition. Addiction is abnormal, meaning a small percentage of people in the world have addiction. Unmanageability is pandemic. Everybody in the world has unmanageability. It's the way we're built. It's human structure. What does it look like? You've maybe been exposed to the page 52 second paragraph called the bedevilments because that word is on that page. Using the personal pronoun present tense. I am having trouble with personal relationships. Is that true for you today? On a scale of 1 to 10, is it a 10 or is it a 1? We never transcend our humanity. Bill said at the beginning of step 10, watch for resentment, fear, dishonesty, and selfishness when they crop up, not if. Are you in control or managing properly and in a healthy way your emotions? Are you a prey to misery and depression? Today, as you're not when you were using and not in early recovery, but today, not yesterday even, but today, are you able to be satisfied with the life that you have and financial security? A feeling of uselessness, full of fear, unhappy. How are you doing with helping other people? When I took it into meditation, I'm 10 years sober, doing this work, seeing this material, learning this material, having an experience for the very first time of unmanageability, what it feels like, what it looks like. This is a behavioral description. I asked in meditation, well, what does it mean I can't be of real help to people? I mean, I'm a sponsor. And the voice said to me, Herb, you can't be a real help to other people in the sense that you don't really want to help people. You want the reputation of helping people. And I was having an experience with that extreme self-centeredness that the unmanageability process in the big book, pages 60 to 62, leads you through, at least it led me through for the very first time. So we enter the world of the spirit. We're going now into step 10. I use a model of the human being as mind and will. I'm not going to exercise that in any depth right now. You can listen to any of the recordings in my YouTube if you want to really plumb the depths and breadth of this transition into the world of the spirit. Bill says we enter the world of the spirit because we've come out of the world of self. We have recovered. He says we've been placed in a position of neutrality. We have physical sobriety, that gift that comes from the completion of step 9. But we're not cured. We have a daily reprieve. I came to the realization that although my addiction had been removed, my unmanageability is never removed. I need to take full responsibility to my life, meaning I'm not locked down into unmanageability. There's no ceiling, there's no floor, there's no walls. But I have to take responsibility for a daily reprieve, the tools of 10, 11, and 12. This awakening is a turning from my self-centeredness to other-centeredness. It's really that simple. You want to know what this is about? You want to know what awakening is? You want to know what transformation is? The turning, committed to in step 3. Made a decision to turn and completed by step 9, in which we have a relationship with power other than ourself, a coin having 2 sides, and a healthy relationship with others, especially through contribution. A spiritual awakening, a change in the way we think and feel and behave, and it's done to us, not by us, but not without us. Take a pause here. And Joe, you have some comments in terms of the orientation, and then perhaps we should open it up to people. They might already have some questions. I don't see any hands yet, but if some come up, we'll address it. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Herb. So the Herb has a slide. I don't know if it's coming or if it's coming today, but the big book talks about, and you will hear about it if we ever look, if we have time to look more at steps 1, 2, and 3. But step 1, I'm powerless over my addiction. Some of you really identify alcohol, drugs, relationships, food, gambling. What am I powerless over today that I'm aware of? Well, I can tell you there's more that you're not aware of. Right? We're just not aware of it. Go ahead, Herb.
We use the term powerless so easily, we become robotic and it has no meaning to us. So I like, and you've heard me say it, the word no choice. I have no choice about the addiction. I have no choice whether I use it and whether I stop and stay stopped. But the key that you're talking about is I don't have the power of choice in terms of the spiritual malady, the unmanageability. And this, all of this is all about finding a power that allows us to use our choice in a healthy way. That's why I'm so glad that you reframed your fellowship and your approach to your life, because it's really about having some consciousness and a contact with power, and then sustaining consistently that consciousness to power, so that then I can manage my addiction, whether that's regulation or abstinence, because the words are going to be different depending on different addictions, whether it's a substance or process addiction. And so now I'm going to stop now, because you and I.
I'll come back in. That's all right. We can stop and say, as Herb said, we have not presented together before. I can manage, like I can present by myself, and Herb presents beautifully by himself and with others. This is our first time together. So you're here for the first one. That's wonderful. And hopefully there's many more. The set-aside prayer is something that Herb, through the work, introduced me to. You find that on page 58 of the big book, not the prayer itself. It's other places in the big book, but that intuition that Bill had, that we needed to let go of our prejudice. Because I work with people and they tell me I'm an alcoholic and I'm sober, so I'm done, right? I'm done. Why am I still depressed? Why am I still messing around in relationships? It's a secret, okay? Why am I still lacking transparency? You know what? Why am I still miserable, irritable, restless, and discontent? So that set-aside prayer is something, if you haven't, I think most of us here know this prayer, but please set aside everything I think I know. I think I know a lot. I really do. Live with my brain for 2 seconds. I think I know a lot of things. Please set aside whatever it is I think I know. Open my heart and mind for something new, please. And you change the words of that prayer, but bringing the intention of that set-aside prayer opens us up to something new. And that's what we need. We need something new. So I talked about the spiritual set-aside prayer, and he talked about freedom from addiction, steps 1 to 9. Well, I tell you, I did steps 1 to 9. I was in program. I did that workbook multiple times, and I did not have freedom from addiction. And that this is where, so my addiction wasn't being met in one fellowship. And I could go to 30 fellowships. I don't think it would still be met, because it's not about the thing that I'm picking up. It's about my difficulty sitting in the silence. So if you have a pen with you, and I'm going to say some things here that I just suggest you write down, and I'm interested to hear Herb's interpretation. Something that made a big difference for me is when I started doing meditation. To meditate, I just made a very quick translation of this word meditation, and it's from Herb, so it won't be new to him. But when I say to meditate, can you write meditation and just set aside what you think you know about the word meditation, and just for this minute, do the word equals and then write to consider. When I say the word meditate, I'm also saying to consider something, active thinking. So this again started to open me up when I created space every day. If you haven't written this down or heard it before, to sit in the power of an unanswered question. Write that down. I come from anxiety. I don't know Herb's background in terms of how this works for him, but for me, I come from an anxious kind of background. I do not like an unanswered question. Control, I get into control and fixing and meddling because I need to know how it's going to work out. I mean, every relationship I ever started, I jumped straight to the end because I needed to know. Are we going to be together? Is it going to be a disaster? I want to know now. I can't sit in that unknown space. The power to sit in an unanswered question is this beautiful, powerful space where we open up and we allow that spirit. So a design for living is a verb. I love how Herb just said that. Our way of life, he said, was a noun. A design for living is an action. You got to take action. And that's what this program is about. If you're still writing, if you have a pen, something that I often say in these workshops is, did you meditate today? Really? I don't want to put you on the spot, but ask yourself right now, in that meditation is consider something, to sit in the power of an unanswered question and consider it, to sit in consideration. Did you do that today? Because I'm going to put a slide up. I don't know what will happen to the screen if I put the slide up. Let's have a look. Here we go. So there's a slide on the screen if you're listening, and it says, it has a picture of some glasses, and it says the words, "We don't see reality clearly." That's us. There's two parts to this. When I'm working with new people, I keep it pretty simple. We don't see reality clearly. I might not say it like that because that's usually you're just helping them, get out the door. Like, what is it you need to get on with your life today? Where is your life on fire? That's where we'll look first. But when you get into this work, it's recognizing that set aside prayer, because anything that I tell you is not going to be real. I don't see reality clearly. I don't see anything clearly. And yet I have to function every day in this world. How do I get up? How do I get to work? How do I function when I really don't see what's happening right in front of me?
Yeah.
So that quiet, our way of life, a design for living, is an action. Did you do it today? It doesn't matter what you think. I just showed you. We don't see reality clearly. It doesn't matter. And I'm a very clever thinker. Well, I think I am. So I have to learn not to trust my thinking. I have to observe my behavior. What action did I take today towards recovery? A design for living is a verb. It's an action. What action did you take? Now, everyone here took a fantastic action. You've turned up to a workshop, and I'm seeing lots of people writing. So you are involved in your recovery, and that's enough. The other thing we can get to is it's never enough. So when Herb talked about that assignment document that he has, you've got people and they get very wound up, and I have to listen to everything, do everything, and they have this sense that it's never enough. I need to do more. And again, our behavior tells us what we believe. Who's in charge there? When you keep pushing and you keep pushing yourself, are you living in that set-aside attitude where you have that quiet, whispering sound blowing through you and you're leaning into that? Or are you in charge? Are you going to fix your addiction? Self-sponsorship is rampant. Who's in charge today? So just for today is, what is the loving thing for me to do today? Now, this came to me inspired from Paul O, listening to one of our speakers. He's an AA speaker who wrote the acceptance prayer in the big book. And I really, he shared something along those lines, and it inspired me. So I sit in the power of an unanswered question every day. And usually that question is, what is the loving thing for me to do today? Not for you, not for my dog, not for work, not for my neighbors, for me.
Mm.
Now, as a more codependent personality, anxious personality, I struggle to sit in the silence of that question, just to allow that question to surround me. So sitting in the silence, I use a timer. 2 minutes generally of active thinking. That's pretty much all my brain can cope with, 2 minutes. And then I start to get a wandering brain. So I use a timer and I sit with that question. And I wonder, because I come from more that codependency, I wonder if you come from more that, I mean, the word narcissism, but if you come from more that stronger ego, I wonder if it would change. Paul O recommended, what is the kind thing to do next? What is the generous, what is, he suggested some different words. And maybe one of those words will relate to you. But for me, what is the loving thing? Because I'm not loving to myself. I push through. I push myself. So every day I sit in the power of an unanswered question. And that question at the moment for years has been, what is the loving thing for Joe? What is the loving thing for me to do today? And I sit in that power. And as I sit with that question, I've taken steps 1, 2, and 3. I can't manage my life. That's why I'm praying. That's why I'm meditating. I have hope. That's step 2. That's why I'm taking that action, because I have hope. I have some power coming through. I hope, I see in you, and I see in the people and in the people that guide me, my step guides, I see hope. That's why I'm praying. And that's why I'm sitting in that question. And then step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care. I really needed that care of a higher power, as you understand that. So it doesn't have to be a higher power, by the way, but it needs to be loving. If it is a 12-step fellowship connection, it is a loving connection. What is that going to be for you today? For some of us, it's that whispering sound. Paul O, in one of his talks, he talks about many, many voices. And I have one voice that is constantly telling me I'm a horrible person. You're a terrible mother. You're a terrible program person. You're a terrible whatever it is. I have one voice in my head that's always eager to tell me that. All right? I don't know why. And I have another voice that is just sitting there gentle and beautiful and calm, saying, you are enough, Joe, just as you are today. And that is the voice that I plug into. I need to take an action to plug into that voice. And I'll talk more about that as we get into 10, 11, and 12. So coming back to you, Herb.
So Joe has just set us up perfectly for this discussion. We're going to pause, but I want to set the stage here. We're going into a specific conversation about staying active, staying conscious, daily, a practice of step 10, keeping our channel clear with inventory on a spot check basis, keeping the channel filled with consciousness through that meditation practice that she described as consider, an active use of our mind to receive guidance, to then allow this channel that's been cleared of the shadow, filled with the light, to shine the light out on the path so others can walk it. The word I use, it's interesting how you phrase that and put it into a context, Joe, that I'm going to go off of this share. That your issue is codependency, and your loving kindness mantra is for yourself. Of course, as you know, and I self-disclose, my issue is just the opposite, narcissism. All right. And so my mantra is helping. Now, loving kindness is a lens through which I like to look because it softens my heart, it softens my look. But I have to focus on how can I help today. I'm very expert at being loving and kind to me. So I'm not sure are you muted?
I'm nodding away. I'm laughing, Herb. And
Oh.
but I love the comparison because I have my instinct is to be very aware of what everyone around me needs, that hypervigilance. And I'm thinking what you're thinking, what they're thinking of their thinking. And it drove me to that place where I couldn't get to my letterbox, where I blushed if you saw me, my biggest thing was I didn't want to be seen. And this is recovery here today.
Just so opposite. So opposite. I did everything I could to get on the stage. Lights, please. Lights, please. I want to be seen. That's just amazing. There was a hand up. She put her hand down, and I don't want to embarrass you. Maybe your question or thoughts were answered. Amy, you had it up for a while, and if you want to come back, you're welcome to. We don't have any hands right now, and we are pausing for questions or comments or experiences, and then we're going to go on to talk in some fashion about steps 10, 11, and 12, although Joe has already introduced it wonderfully effectively. So we're not organized in any particular way. Amy, please.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to ask a question. My name's Amy, I'm an alcoholic. And my question is, I have a voice that creeps in that is based in, the only way I know how to say it is, it's superstitious. And it leads me astray. You know, I think, oh, this is going well. I'm really starting to feel the ability to let go and, you know, acknowledge my unmanageability and so many other things other than alcohol. And so I wonder if you could speak on that, like where to go with that.
Well, I'm happy to. I'm not quite sure where to go, but I need a little more traction in terms of what are you talking about in terms of your question. You talk about superstition, but I don't know. You say you're 7 years sober, and yet there's something there amiss that you're trying to explain, but I've not heard it yet.
Okay.
Maybe Joe did, but I've not heard what the issue is.
What I mean by superstition is it's more of if I don't do things perfectly, then I'm going, like how somehow I can control what the outcome is going to be.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. So you have the delusion that you can control.
Yes.
But did you hear me? It's a delusion that you can control anything. Control is a word, quite frankly, I would recommend we eliminate from our language. We influence, but we don't control. And so maybe Joe has a response that might help a little bit more, because she did talk about the perfectionist. And my experience is up till today, I was listening to a recording. Up till that moment, I was saying 40 to 50% of the people in my workshop are perfectionists. But this man was quoting from a Yale study of alcoholics, and he said 95% of them are perfectionists. And I was like startled. But anyway, Joe?
Yeah, the perfectionism, I think, ties into that unresolved fear. All right. And we just have this unresolved fear. So there's a lot of us there. So the fear inventory work that we do in that extended colon work can help. But when you're new and you're just kind of trying to put the fire out, it would really be looking at where in your life are you out of balance. Amy, how I recognize I'm out of balance is that voice that tells me, you call it superstitious voice, that voice that tells me I'm no good, that I'm going to fail, that I'm a terrible person, that voice gets really loud. When I'm out of balance, unmanageable, when my life is out of balance, or maybe it's unmanageability, but maybe it's another form of addictive behavior that you haven't kind of acknowledged yet. But you might know. So when I'm in addictive behavior, I get hit by self-loathing like a ton of bricks. And so today, that's a gift. I have to tell you it's a gift because I haven't picked up yet. You're sober. That's amazing. You haven't picked up, but if we stay involved in addictive behavior, depression, anxiety, it doesn't end well.
No, the tension coming from that will bring you back to a drink because that's the easiest way to release the tension. Or if you're in a different program, then different substance or process addictions. So I think something is connecting to your sense of reality. Do you have a sponsor?
I do.
Do you talk to this person?
Yeah, I talk to her a couple times a week.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. And have you discussed this with her?
Yes. I've talked to her about my, just repetitive thinking, obsessive thinking, things like that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I write about it,
Yes.
but then I found that it has switched to, I just write what I'm grateful for, because I found that sometimes writing the repetitive thought makes it worse.
I agree. What we focus on can expand, and sometimes to write it is to identify it, and then talk about it is to diminish it. But going to the gratitude list or in many of my worksheets, the turnaround is when I create up the positive or the alternative. What is the alternative? What is the benefit? What is the attitude, the principle, and the behavior that goes with it, so that you can focus on the healthy part rather than being bogged down in the unhealthy part.
Yep.
But it is really about consciousness and practice and willingness to make mistakes and not allowing the mistake to name me. I'm not the mistake. I just made a mistake. Oh, what an opportunity to course correct. Now, in my case, I need the humility on a regular basis, which seems to be served up in plenty. All right, that I make mistakes and I course correct and that kind of thing. I don't know whether that's helpful or not.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would add, Herb, I would add the chasing the drama thing. When we put down our drugs and we put down that addictive behavior and we put it down, life, there's like this bottomless pit of boredom. I don't know if you identify with that, but when you put it down, it's like, God save me. Don't make me boring. Anything but boring. And we chase, so life can be a drama. We chase one drama after another drama. And there's this mechanism that goes on of chasing adrenaline. Anything, gossip, drama. Let me tell you the story, because when I tell you the story of how bad my life is, my adrenaline comes up. So when you sit there and you say, I'm festering and I'm worrying, what's also happening is your adrenaline's coming up, and you are getting that addiction to adrenaline. We're in irritable, restless, and discontent. I can be alone in my room and suddenly get hit by, recognize, hey, I'm bored and I know how to get out of that. I'll just start worrying about some calamity of life, death.
Well,
someone's going to die.
One of the pieces in the formula of the 10-step at the beginning is to pray. because I am powerless. But the conclusion of the 4-step process in the 10-step, the last piece is to be helpful to somebody else. And the last thing I'm ever is bored, because my constant chronic, if you will, thought is, how can I help somebody else and be more effective at it? And if in fact you're focused on somebody else, you're not going to be focused on yourself.
Yeah. So Amy, look at that first step. I'm powerless over my fantasy thinking, my ruminating. I'm powerless over my whatever, how you described it, I forget, but you know, that thinking that you get into. I'm powerless over that thinking. And remember, it affects our body. So there's that adrenaline that I'm talking about, and it affects my mind. I don't see reality clearly. So I'm powerless over this way of thinking, that my life has become unmanageable, right? Step 1 doesn't finish there, because if I allow that thinking to go on, the dishes don't get done. I don't get to work. The relationships are a mess, and I'm in depression. So just look at that, the steps. It's like, look at those steps from a different perspective, and you will maybe start to see some movement. Pray, ask for help, sit in that guidance. And great question.
Thank you so much, Amy. Sarah, please.
Hi, Herb and Joe. Thank you so much. This is a step 10 question. I called somebody the other day, or actually she called me, because I put a request out for somebody to take a 10th step from me. And I was going to start my 10th step, and she said, no, wait a minute. Where are you in your step work? And are you really in a place where you should be doing 10 steps? And
interesting question. I don't agree with the question, but let me hear where it went.
So let me back up. I'm recovered from compulsive eating and exercise.
No, it doesn't matter. Stay with the
So what happened was, she asked me that, and I said, hey, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. You take care. Because
that's what I would have done.
well, I was like, and so the question I have for you guys is, there's this notion, at least in my community, that you can only do a 10 step with someone else who's recovered. And I don't think that there's anywhere in the big book that it says that.
Well, and I agree with it. It says talk to someone. That's all it says. Talk to someone. So, as you know, if you've been exposed to my recent approach to the steps, I introduce people to the 10th step before they've even done the first step.
I know.
It's such a great tool. It's such a
great
tool, but maybe Joe has some comments on that.
Yeah, I just want to, was this woman your sponsor? You said she let you go. So what did
it was
mean?
it was a random call.
This was a random call on a GroupMe app. I put my name out. Is anybody available to take a 10 step? She called me, and I said, I started with the 10 step, and she said, no, wait a minute. What step are you on? Are you really in a place where you can? And I said to her, hey, I'm going to let you go. Take care. And
I think that was a very kind, very kind bullet in the head.
Yeah. So you held your boundaries, and I have a slide. There's an interesting effect that happens. You held your boundaries, Sarah. Her behavior, like the 10th step happens immediately. It says, tell someone. Now, I mean, don't tell them the story. So a lot of us get into stories. So, I mean, you could look at that from my side of the street was, am I wanting to tell people the story? Because that we reserve for sponsorship, really, because we don't see reality clearly. And every time we retell the story, we set ourselves up for failure. We set ourselves up. But to do a 10th step and she says you're not up to it, well, I get people doing 10 steps from day one. Pray, tell someone, make amends if you've caused harm, and turn our thoughts to helping others. So I teach that from the beginning. But I just want to talk about, you said something. When you hung up that phone, Were your hands shaking? How were you feeling? Was your heart racing, and were you overwhelmed by that?
That's a great question. I was okay with it, but I knew I had another 10-step to do.
Yeah.
I had to do a 10-step
Right.
on that.
Right.
I had 2 10-steps where I had one. And, I'm on this 10-step line, and somebody used to call and to, offer to take my 10-step. And 9 times out of 10, I would end up with a 10-step based on the conversation that we had. And so finally I said to her, do me a favor. I'm not looking to pick up 10 steps. So when I put my name out, please don't call me, and I won't call you, because I just am collecting them with you. And so the question really is for me, who do we call?
Call anybody you want.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
I teach it different. When we get to step 10, maybe we should be moving along. We got one more hand, but I teach it different to a little bit. So this would be just hold that thought. Hold that thought.
Well,
Who do we call? Yeah.
well, why don't we? No, go ahead.
You want to do it now?
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's the hot subject.
It's the hot subject. It's just so you talk about that unsettled. You're unsettled. For me, because I come from that codependency, when I have to set a boundary I can often set a boundary with someone really well. Hang up the phone. I do. I mean, Herb, we have disagreements in the time, or people, not too many disagreements, but when you have a discussion and you have to hold your boundaries, you hold your boundaries. I do. I'm great to have in a car accident. I held my space really well. But then I walk away and I'm shaking. The after effects of having had our boundaries stepped on create, you said I needed another 10th step. Well, you know what it is? Suddenly I'm irritable, restless, and discontent. I haven't eaten any food or taken any drugs, but it's that codependency. I'm dependent on them behaving in the way that I want them to behave. And they're not doing it right. Right? She didn't do.
But you were going to comment on about who to call.
Well, I do want to go into more detail, but it says tell someone immediately, Sarah, and I tell whoever's in front of me.
Yes.
Perfect.
Anyone.
Yes.
I don't usually have the energy to get onto if I have the energy to get onto the phone and make a phone call, it's more of an 11th step, and there's been more, I'm further away from the disturbance. Yeah. Right. I need to talk to my sponsor. If I'm making a phone call, it's to the wise women that are in my life and not to some random person. If I'm doing a 10th step, I'll say, hey, Amy. Oh, sorry. Hey, Sarah, I'm feeling anxious. I don't know why, but hey, I'm having an emotion, and I don't go into the story. That's the biggest thing, take away from step 10 is don't go into the story. And a lot of those worksheets people go into, it takes reflection. I can't reflect when I'm in the midst of that emotion. I have to get some distance from that emotion so I can start to see reality clearly, more clear. And in the midst of it, so I'm raising 2 kids, and my husband, I'll just say, hey, I'm feeling tired. Can we discuss this later? Exactly. Can we discuss this after dinner? Page 118 of that big book gives kind of some marriage counseling, the big book, page 118, if you have it with you. I use that as a 10th step. So I'll talk more about it, but that's the point. I don't really participate in those lists too much. I'll tell anyone, a stranger.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And that's the crux. When after that conversation, I sat with my higher power and said, thank you for letting that happen, because it's bringing up for me, who is it that I call? And my higher power was like, anybody. Doesn't have to be somebody who's recovered, doesn't have to be somebody in a 12-step program. You just need a witness.
That's it.
And you can do it with me. You can do it with me.
It's really the human function of somehow disclosing it takes the power out of it.
Yes.
So
Yep.
thanks,
Beautiful.
Sarah. very
Thank
much.
you so much.
I think that was a very healthy discussion about step 10. Yeah, so there we go. Lori, please.
I have a step 11 question. I'm
Yes.
in Herb's current spiritual awakening workshop. And I thought I heard you say, Herb, the other day that when we're meditating, we are listening for the sound of our higher power, the wee small sound.
Or just guidance. We don't need to put
Okay.
particular
And then,
words to
okay,
it. Well, wait. We're listening to our thinking for guidance, but go ahead. Yeah.
And I think I heard you say we need to trust ourselves.
Well, we
That
need
we're
to be
hearing
open.
from our higher power.
Well, we
And-
need to be open to trusting ourselves. But if in fact you haven't done a fourth step, all right, or if you're really new in recovery, I would not be recommending that you trust your thinking very well until you've done a fourth step and or have some experience with recovery, because we're fairly demented and delusional until in fact we're not. So, but yes, you would have heard me say it with the qualifications. Yeah. But that's what sponsors are for too, or somebody that is a companion as a sounding board for our wacky thoughts.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thanks, Laura. You're very.
Thank you.
Joe, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, Laurie, I recommend, you sit in the power of an unanswered question. So if you rush to answer that question, you're in disease. Like there's disease there right away, right? Just allowing yourself to have an unanswered problem, an unsolved problem. What am I going to do with these people? What am I going to do at work? What am I going to do at home? What am I going to do with my kids? And just sit. I don't know. It's the set aside attitude. Laurie doesn't know. Open my heart and mind for something new. And we sit in the power of an unanswered question. At the end of that period of unanswered question, I write things down. Now that doesn't make it true, right? It doesn't make it true, but I have a fanciful brain. I can have the most amazing thoughts. And then 5 minutes later, I can't remember. No idea, right? No idea. So I write down the inspiration after a meditation, and then I'll do that again tomorrow. And I do that again tomorrow. And after a period of days, if you have that same thought coming up again and again, I then would take it to a wise woman. So someone in your connection, maybe not a sponsor, but someone who's working a program that you feel safe with. And I would say, hey, I'm getting this inspiration. What do you think? So I would run it by someone. That's the process, a design for living. Yeah?
It's got that process is a very sophisticated spiritual process. You articulated it wonderfully simply. It's called discernment. Discernment is just a fancy term for thinking in the milieu of prayer. As you really nicely said, hold the question, hold the thought, hold the ambivalence, but having prayed first and then stay with the guidance. I keep a pad on my lap and a pen when I'm doing my meditation in the morning for that piece of it, because there are random things that come in to me and I don't want to continue to try to remember them. So I just write them down to park them, and or as Joe was just indicating, to accumulate some random thoughts over a period of time and then spend a particular meditation looking at all those thoughts to see if there's something in there as a pattern that is an inspiration for me. And then eventually, if I need to, I haven't come to a conclusion myself, to kind of review it with somebody who I trust. So yeah, it's a process though.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks, Lori, very much.
Very helpful.
Yeah, so what we've done here is we've actually jumped into the pool of the 10 step. We've jumped into the pool of the 11 step without doing it formally with my PowerPoints, but we'll see where we're going with this. Please, Cheryl.
Yes, hi, Herb. I'm here, Cheryl, laying in the bed here. Thank you so much. One of my questions is the 11-step question. So I get up early in the morning. It's 4 a.m. in the morning. It's pretty late for me now. But I wanted to be here. And, you know, you mentioned about prayer and meditation and 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. But man, when I'm getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning, I'm rushing out the door.
Well, okay, but you know, well, wait, let's just back up a bit here. Why do you think you want to pray and meditate?
Oh, wow. Well, you know, I do want to contemplate my day. I know when I do.
No, you're just describing words from a book. I
Okay.
want to hear it from your heart. Why do you want to pray and meditate? Or why do you think you want to?
I want to be in more conscious contact with my higher power. I really do.
Really? Is that what you really want?
Yeah, I think so.
Really? No. Did you just hear what you said? I really want to improve my conscious contact with my higher power, but by God, I'm too busy.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you just said.
Yeah. Do you have a pen and paper with you, Cheryl? Do you have some pen and paper there?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to get you to write something down. You ready?
Okay. Yes.
You ready?
Yes.
My behavior tells me what I believe. I want you to write that down and think about it. My behavior tells me what I believe. We don't see reality clearly, so we have to look at our behavior. And Herb's coming at it. You know, when we don't pray and meditate, that tells us that we don't believe we need prayer and meditation. And if we identify with this addictive personality in any of the fellowship, anywhere that you come, but if you get off beam, the one thing that's common is we need power. We need that guidance to get through another day, you know, in balance. Right. So my behavior tells me what I believe. So you're getting up at 4. So you believe you need to work because you're getting up at 4. So that's right. What you can tell. And you put your hand up and you asked a question just now. So you believe you're worth it. You're really brave. I mean, facing Herb, that's brilliant. So you believe you're worth it. That tells you a lot. Okay, it tells you a lot. And it tells me a lot. So well done. You know, really, really beautiful. But when we don't pray and meditate, it tells us something as well.
What I have been doing, Joe, I tell you, I've been, you know, following her for a while. I've started his big book workshop just now and coming here. I have been saying the set aside prayer every single morning.
That's beautiful.
So that's my prayer. That's my prayer. And I have been trying to have a you know, what Herb says, contemplation, like contemplating my thought, just like similar to what you said, to consider my active thinking. I like that, to set up the power of an unanswered question. So just having just taking time after I say my prayer, whatever that prayer may be, and taking time to contemplate that thought, right?
That's it. So the word contemplation I use with breathing in and breathing out. You know, that empty mind stuff, that's just me. And meditation, I use when I'm thinking about something. So I separate those two. And, but you know, you're getting up at 4 a.m., you don't have too much time. You know, you got to get out the door. I would use a timer and I would just start with 1 minute, and you sit in the power of an unanswered question for 1 minute. And the question can be the set aside prayer. What is it I need to set aside today?
Who am I? You know,
who am I today?
Yeah. Okay.
Who do I want to be at work today? Do I want to be kind and loving and patient? You know, who am I today? And you sit for 1 minute and you're done. And maybe you have a chance to do that at morning tea break and at lunch break, you know, and after. You do it multiple times a day. So our actions tell us what we believe. So you just find a way to manage it with your life where you're getting up at 4 a.m., you know?
Right. And like you
And just
said,
another wonderful, powerful, and practical suggestions. But here's one that you might want to really consider. You say you have a consistent practice of prayer. Why not make the prayer itself that you're practicing, your meditation, slow it down and listen to the words that you're mouthing? Think about the prayer as your meditation.
right. And after I do that, that's a good point, because what I do after I say that set aside prayer, you say something like, release me up to now, and detach me past now, and to allow me to stay in the present now. So I say that afterwards, and I do try to focus in on just that.
Fabulous.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
That's your meditation right there.
Yes.
You're
thank
doing it. You're doing it, Cheryl. That's it.
Right,
So don't that maybe that perfectionism's coming in. You're doing it.
That's-
Maybe use a timer. So then, you know, it's not those of us that are perfectionists, it's good to weigh and measure because we judge it. I did a good meditation. I did a bad meditation. Let that go. You either did it or you didn't do it. And I use a timer so then I know I've done it and let go of everything else. So maybe add a timer to it and keep it at one, just keep it brief. It doesn't have to be long, 1 minute.
Right. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Cheryl, for the courageous call. Thank you.
My question is related to step 12. And so I really appreciated your answers to the questions about step 10 and step 11. And so I can identify with Jill so much when she talks about wanting to help people. And that's where I'm getting stuck in the 12 steps is step 12. So I really.
Well, what's your question? What's your question?
Yeah, so I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about step 12 in somebody who like really wants to help people.
Yeah, who really wants to help people, like where that's our problem, right? That's where we get off beam, is helping people, so we don't see it clearly.
What does it mean, I want to help people? How could you help people? What kind of help can you provide?
Well, I really care about people, and I think I'm really good at.
Answer my question.
Okay, well, I'm good at seeing both sides.
Answer my question.
I want to help people like negotiate and collaborate with each other. And yeah, help them be, I just want to help them so much.
Well, give me an example. I mean, are you a therapist? Are you an attorney? Are you licensed or certified or trained in any of those areas?
Well, I became a physician, but I wish I had become, it's making me sad. Yeah. I was trained as a family practice physician, and I was raised in like a codependent family, no alcohol or drugs.
Okay, so wait. Without the story, how could you, because you do have a background then of helping, you've been trained and educated to help people, at least biologically. All right. What prevents you from doing that?
I'm not taking care of myself.
Oh, so that's not really the issue then. The real issue is, how do I take care of myself?
And not put other people's opinions and needs more consistent.
Okay. Now I'm going to invite Joe into the conversation.
Yeah, Charlene, my heart goes out. It's really step 12. Step 12 for me is not about helping people. I mean, I know that's part of it, but at where you're at right now, I don't think you're ready for that. Look at the first half of step 12, having had a spiritual awakening. Okay, that means we fall asleep and we need to wake up. So when I'm getting off beam, you said I really want to help people. But maybe that is, what if you put that, do you know, I mean, even as you said it, I felt it, I could see it. Can you feel it happening? Capture that feeling, what it feels like. I want to help people. And now put that feeling in step 1. I'm powerless over, it's not alcohol. It's my desire to help people because it's killing me. Okay, I'm powerless over my desire to help people. It affects my body. Your hands were shaking, your heart races. It's a physical reaction. And then it affects my mind. I don't see reality clearly. That's that hypervigilance. Everything that I see is what other people need. I just don't see reality clearly. I'm powerless. And then that second half to step 1, that my life has become unmanageable. I can't get to work. I get out of balance. I'm working, but I'm working, 100 hours a week. I go home and I'm working till 2 a.m. in the morning on someone else's problems. And then I don't sleep because I'm thinking about them and thinking about them again.
At the same time, Joe, though, she said that what prevents me from helping people is I don't take care of myself. Now, that's where seems to be connected to that codependency, where she's not taking care of herself and she's, quite frankly, covering it up by this concern for other people. Yeah. So I do actually run codependency workshops. So you can come talk to me about that. We'll get into that. I have a slide on that. I do actually run workshops. This is, I'll put some details up, but the answer for me was in the big book. You talk about, if you hear something from me and you hear some recovery, everything that I've got is from that big book and taking the essence. It's not clear. I mean, my big book here, it's written by a whole bunch of fellas. I'm a woman. It's written a long time ago, and they really were focused on resentments. It seems the resentment. I tell you, my focus was that anxiety and fear, the fear inventory, and they don't seem to, it gets missed a little bit. And that's the impact of this extended column work and the work that I do in my own work with people as a coach, is that you can push out that work, look at your resentments, but look at your fear as well, because there is something that is stopping you from being the one that you need to be. So finding balance is in front of you. For me, the method, the path, I said before, we need a path, Charlene, we do. And for me, that pathway is written out in that big book, and it is quite beautiful. We need a teacher. I actually am a teacher. I'm a step guide and coach, and I am around. Herb offers himself as a teacher so freely, but you need a teacher in your life. And then the other thing that we really need is a community. So that is a bunch of peers, people just like yourself, who are ferociously working. Step 10 says the proper use of the will. Herb puts up a slide. Herb, you talk about the body, the mind, and the will. So if you want to draw a triangle, if you've got a pen in front of you, you do that triangle. And on one side of the triangle, you do the body. And then the other side of the triangle, you do, thank you so much, guys. On the other side of the triangle, you do the mind. And down the bottom, you do the will. This is it. Now, I want you to write from that body, where it says body, do a little arrow that comes out and says, this is how I feel. Because we feel our body. So I saw it in you, Charlene. We feel discomfort. We feel our hands shake, our heart races, my voice trembles. I feel
often I connect to feeling irritable, restless, and discontent. It's in my body. Now you go down to the mind. The mind is the thinking. So that's the logic and the rationale and the story that you tell. That's your thinking. I mean, I have compassion for you. I know that it's tough, but it's not about how we feel. And it's not about what we think. That's our mind. Remember, we don't see reality clearly. Remember those glasses? We don't see reality clearly. It's about what we do, our actions. This is a program of action, and that comes out of the will. The proper use of the will, page 85. The ferocious use of the willpower. Herb, you want to come in?
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe, very much. I'm glad we were able to work the slides with that, and I hope it was helpful. And she used the word a lot, ferocious, all right? That's my term that I use in the third step. It's not passive. It's not surrender. It takes everything we got to commit to do steps 4 through 9 and then to continue with 10, 11, and 12. Everything we got, and we will not be able to sustain that ferocity. We're just human. But our intention, I just love the word, and I just love the way you just hammered it home. And so thank you, Joe, for that. And I think what we want to do at this point with, from a formal standpoint, the 10 minutes that we have left, I'm happy to stay a little while later than the 5:30, but I don't want to encumber anybody, and especially Joe, who has lots of responsibilities. But I think what I'd like to invite is questions, or first I'll ask Joe to give any comments that she wants to on 10, 11, and 12. And then anybody who has any questions, raise their hand on 10, 11, and 12, or anything that we've talked about or haven't talked about that would be helpful, and see what happens with the time on that.
Yeah, that's great.
So Joe, you're first up.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
right, ready? So I do want to say some things on 10, 11, and 12. So I've been working with Herb for 15 or so years, and as I said, I mean, I'll lead a workshop to say I don't love crowds. I nowadays, you know, I'm better than I was, but I love guiding people, but I didn't do a very good job to start with, you know, because I didn't know what I was doing. We're constantly transmitting, and you know, I was probably transmitting some of that disease, you know, so it's a good idea. Oh, my power is about to go. Just a minute. Am I connected to power? I need to meditate. Quick.
Lack of power is
Lack of
level.
power. It just tells me, wait a minute. There we go. See, that's all it takes. Now, so just to summarize 10, 11, and 12. So I started working with Herb 15 or so years ago. And about 5 years ago, he started changing his presentation to start with 10, 11, and 12. And that had been an organic change that I had been doing as well. I basically would take anyone I was working with, and I work with a lot of people, and I would take them through the work in 30 days. We wouldn't go into any depth, right? You don't go into any depth, but you give them relief, because we need relief to get through the rest of the work. Okay, this is a long process. It's a marathon, but we need to be able to get some relief from the daily grind of being in unmanageability and being in disease. So I'm powerless, and I broaden what you think that powerlessness is. I really love challenging people and kind of opening them up to like we just did with some of the members there. I'm powerless over, and put something new in there, recognizing it affects your body and it affects your mind. You won't see clearly. You don't see reality clearly, and that our lives have become unmanageable. So I took 30 days and I started taking people through the work, and we would, by the end of 30 days, they would generally have some relief, or they'd stopped calling me Herb. That also happens, right? But I took them through the work. And then at the end of 30 days, we then join on to wherever the workshop is, because we're leading workshops, and take more of a longer time and take a longer look, because there's more to it. There's more to it. So starting this workshop, I start with step 12. So I don't start with step 10, I start with step 12, and I tell them, hey, having had a spiritual awakening, that's why we're here. Everyone here is a seeker. I can tell because you're here and you're doing the work, right? Having had a spiritual awakening. And I talk about that with new people, and we read Appendix 2, and I introduce that whispering sound, which really is powerful to me. In the Appendix 2, it talks about inner resource. I tell them it's not in me, it's not in Herb, it's not in any guru, because we love, this is not a self-help program. This is not a self-help program. We fall into that self-sponsorship. That's our default setting, self-sponsorship. I mean, I see it all the time in some of those other fellowships. Ask them, who's your sponsor? And they'll tell you, I don't believe in sponsors. I don't have a sponsor. I'm like, okay, all right. I was 21 years old and someone in the family died, and they delivered Meals on Wheels. I don't know if you get that in America. Do you get Meals on Wheels? I get, and I ate one meal, and then I ate the next meal, and then I ate the next meal, and then I don't know if normal people do that, but that's what I do.
No,
right?
they don't.
Right? I just could not, and I don't remember feeling anything at all. There was no thought process, and there was no emotion. And I was so grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the food as well, because it helped me to survive some parts of my childhood that I was struggling with, and I was alone, and I'm grateful that the food was there. But at some point, it turned to be a damaging influence in my life. Obesity is where I go to. All right? It's just very simple. I need to be amongst foodies who are recovering one day at a time, and they have to be keeping their eyes off my plate, right? If I'm in a fellowship and they're looking at what's on my plate, what I'm doing, I get pretty anxious around that. I just hate being told what to do. That's just me. I'm just a hard nut sometimes.
And that's never interfered with our relationship.
No, right? Right? It's human beings. But I've been in recovery most of the time I've been with Herb, and it's been a joy. But with Herb, I've experienced postnatal depression, by the way. I've experienced, I started going in and out of, I had to change fellowships because my anxiety was coming back. I need to be in a place where people aren't bothering me with my program. That's my business. Yeah. And that includes my sponsor. And so my sponsor doesn't get busy in my program. She just reflects to me, it sounds like you're off beam. What's going on? Do you want to do some work around that? And if you've still got your pens with you, suffering is the great persuader. We suffer. And I start to suffer, and she says to me, well, do you want to do some step work? Like, do you want to do some writing? And we'll talk about it tomorrow. And I'll say, okay, all right. And then I don't call her for a week, right? And then she calls me, or I call her, and I'm in suffering, and she goes, well, it sounds like you're in some suffering there. Do you want to do some step work? And I'll say, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll do it tomorrow. And I don't do it. And, it takes time for me to get the suffering enough to be willing to start doing some work. And the work that I do, the path that I follow has been laid out by Herb and the people that went before him, that extended column work. He's not the only one. Dan Sherman did that spiritual awakening book. There are and there are other faith, other people around the world that have evolved this method. It's not unique to 12-step.
Right.
It's a beautiful human process of recovery. So just to summarize and then finish up, because I see the time, I start with people looking at step 12, and I read that spiritual awakening, appendix number 2, having had a spiritual awakening, and I say, we're asleep. You know, that's it. And that's all I say, especially if someone's new. That's it. Then I go to step 11. Step 11 is for me that prayer and meditation in the morning. What did you do in the morning? Do you plug into power? But I need to meditate before I read my email, before I check WhatsApp, before I check the so-called news. Okay, because I don't see reality clearly. What am I plugging into for power? If the first thing I do is read the news, that's my higher power. If the first thing I do is open that WhatsApp channel and all those messages, that's the higher power. My heart starts racing, and that is what I am plugging into. So I have to be very careful. I have the internet off until I've done my meditation, and then I turn it on, and maybe I have a little bit more power to deal with the world around me. So I talk about step 11 and plugging into power in the morning, throughout the day, and at night, right? However that's going to look. It looks different for all of us. That member that has to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, it'll look different for her. But she has to find her own path to plug into power, because we have to plug into power. Otherwise, we plug into, you know, the money god or the WhatsApp god, or we plug into power. Humans plug into power. What is the power you're going to choose today? You know, so in the last part, I bring them to a step 10, and I do this very quickly. I don't wait. Day 1, I'll take them through all this if they'll sit still long enough. Sometimes they don't sit still that long, Herb, because they've got itchy feet, you know, and itchy brain. But if they sit still long enough, I'll take them to a step 10. And the main part to that step 10 is not to tell the story, because we're in a habit of telling the story. We're a victim. Hard done by. So it says, and I take them to page 84 and I read them through that paragraph. And it says, what does it say? It says, when we get disturbed, right? You're going to get disturbed. I'm raising 2 kids, teenagers. They're pain. I had my mother-in-law here last night, you know, and the house is messy, you know, and it's not my mess, and I'm not cleaning it up today because it's other, you know, and she just has to see all that. We get disturbed. You know, we get disturbed. And so the big book says to ask God on page 85. That's his prayer. That's meditation. For me, that means I close my eyes and I breathe. I do it all day long. Step 10 is quick in the moment, wherever you are. So pray. The next thing it says is to tell someone immediately. It doesn't say open your phone and put in, it doesn't even say that. Tell someone. So I tell people that I'm with, whoever I'm with. I'll tell my kids, Mum's feeling tired. I name the emotion. You know, we abandon ourselves, Herb. Just for today, I'm not going to abandon myself today. I have an emotion. I'm feeling disturbed. So I'll tell my husband, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Because I can, you know, with my kids, I might say, I'm feeling a little tired. Can we come out this after lunch? Can you ask me after lunch? I want to concentrate on this, but I'm tired right now. Can we talk about it after lunch? You know, I'm allowed to be tired. A 10th step. Pray. God help me. Tell someone. Make amends if you've caused harm. I'm sorry I yelled. You know, I'm sorry I got short-tempered there. I'm sorry I'm not concentrating right now. That must be difficult, you know, to be with. You know, hey, I know. I'm sorry. And then turn our thoughts to helping others. So the main part of that is I don't tell the story. We really got to get out of telling the story and, got to hammer that home. So I'll stop with that. And I know we've gone over time, but I got all day and I'm fired up. Go ahead, Herb.
She's precious. I just so appreciate you, Joe. Thank you so much. What I'm proposing right now, then, we probably only covered 10% of what we hope to cover today. Joe and I'll talk about rescheduling another one down the road here at some point. I know she enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Hopefully you did. It looks like most everybody stayed. So Francesca, please.
Hello, Herb and Joe. Thank you so much for putting on this and all your work. I've really enjoyed it. I have this question that I hear thrown around the rooms a lot is people telling me and just in general to surrender. I've been struggling in the food fellowship for a while, and I keep getting from sponsors, from Oliver, just surrender. You haven't surrendered. Surrender, surrender, surrender.
Okay, so what's your question?
What would you, I guess, just a take on what that means?
I think it's a wonderful word for step one. Step one is complete defeat. I surrender, I give up, I do not have the power, I need help, I need help, I need help, I surrender, I quit resisting. Step one, all right? Now, I think you didn't say it, but because of the exposure I've had, I think where you're going with it is that people won't work with you unless you're abstinent. They won't allow you to share unless you're abstinent. They won't allow you to work the steps unless you're abstinent, which is completely backwards from my, now I'm going to have Joe comment on this because I'm not in a food program and I don't have food as an addiction, but it seems backwards to me because if in fact you're powerless, meaning you have no choice, and the only way that you get choice is if you have a connection to power, then in fact you need to work the first 9 steps. You have to work the first 9 steps in order to get the power. So you're going to be tripping along clumsily steps 1 through 9. And hopefully when you finish the 9th step or someplace in between, you will connect effectively with power. Okay, so I'm not sure, does that address what your experience and or your question is?
It definitely addresses my experience. And yeah, I guess I feel that I comply.
Well, but comply, what does that mean? That's a horrible word in this process.
Yeah, it's what I think surrendering is, but it's not.
Dr. Tebow wrote an article, surrender versus compliance. Dr. Tebow, you could look at his papers on that. They're 180 degrees different. Compliance is not surrender. That's willfulness. Surrender is a complete implosion. I cannot do this. I am going to listen. I am going to take direction. I am going to take action. Let's hear a little bit from Joe, and I'm sure she has, because it's from her experience, both in the programs and with that addiction. Go ahead, Joe, please.
Yeah. Well, just those ticking boxes. We get told, do this, do this, do this, and tick the boxes and you'll be fine, right? And that it's not about ticking boxes. Nothing in this fellowship is about ticking boxes. The person next to me does no boxes, doesn't even do any work. And yet I see the light of the sunlight coming through them and I see them getting recovery. And I'm ticking every box and I'm miserable. It's not about compliance. So, there's maybe some of that, who are you asking? Like when these people in your life that are saying surrender, stop asking people, right? Stop asking people their opinion, right? That's on us to stop relying on other people's opinion. Now, sponsorship, if a sponsor's telling you about surrendering and that you're not surrendering, okay, listen to that. But for me, coming from these food fellowships, it's about, I'd look at your behavior. What are you doing? You know, are you sitting in the power of an unanswered question? Did you do it today? Don't answer now, but did you do it today? And sometimes I work with people and they're doing everything. They're doing a lot of beautiful work and they're still feeling that tension. So that's when I start to look outside of any one fellowship. Maybe there's something organic going on, right? We need some outside help. Or maybe there's another fellowship, like, for example, the YouTube. The number of people I work with, Herb, who are compulsively watching YouTube. Like, if you ask
Of course.
So it might be that you're ticking those boxes, but you're using somewhere else. And a good sponsor will pull that out of you and, you know, kind of direct you. You know, that whole phrase, God is or God isn't. What am I willing to do today?
At the same time, I'd be careful with that, because in step one, it's about powerless, meaning no choice, meaning there's nothing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that any one of us can do that will guarantee the outcome that we want. There's nothing. That's surrender. That's the implosion. No. It's not in the big book, but the phrase is, I'm screwed. Thank you for laughing. Yeah, no, that's really it. I mean, people think that this is a self-help program when they start talking about compliance and or whatever Joe was talking about. Now, the term that I've heard that I like is there's some preconditions. There's apparently some preconditions. If we do steps 1 through 9, those seem to be the preconditions that deliver us on page 84 to a position of neutrality. But here's, my own experience. I was willing to support my wife, and I was given freedom from alcohol for the rest of my life. It never occurred to me that I was a problem, and I didn't ask for help. But I was delivered without my permission to a life of sobriety. So it can happen at any time. So that's but that's a whole other discussion of grace and willingness. But you clearly have the willingness, and you just show up and you do the best you can, and you do steps 1 through 9. If you can do it in 30 days and get a perspective like Joe was talking about, or you take 5 or 6 months in a weekly workshop, just show up but do the work with experienced people who know what they're doing, which is evidenced in their life, in their behavior, as Joe was talking about. The true litmus test is, how is your life? How is your behavior? Yeah? Thanks, Francesca. So I'm going to bring my slides up and then go strictly or quickly to the end where the prayer is, so that we can pray the prayer. I can expose you to the new version of the 7-step prayer, which it's not obviously formal. It's just my attempt to play with a prayer to make it more relevant for me and my consciousness, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. Let's see if we can get there very quickly. It'll take only a minute. See what you missed. You come back, we'll get some of all of this material and we'll have some fun discussing it. All right, here we go. There we go. So this is an adaptation of the prayer on page 76, the 7-step prayer in the big book. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, healthy and unhealthy. I pray that you now remove from me every single inclination and behavior that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my helpfulness to others. Grant me knowledge, strength, courage, as I go out from here to do your will by living in alignment with reality as it really is. Amen.